Mr. Ben Vaughn. How you doing today?
Hello, I am great. I'm great.
So you're coming to us from, I think you said the Mojave Desert. You're out in the middle, kind of in the middle of nowhere. Is that correct?
Centrally isolated is how we go. Yeah, I'm in the Mojave Desert. Where I am right now in my house is about 1 mile before electricity ends for another 80 miles. I'm at the very end of the grid.
Yeah, and that's very isolated out there, but it's cool. Like, if that's what you want, if you want that lifestyle, it's awesome. That's a great place to be. It's very pretty out there actually too.
Oh, it's
Um,
beautiful. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So you have a big story. You've been a composer for several big shows, a music person for Third Rock, for that '70s show. We'll talk a little bit about that. But also you have a podcast that just started on January 22nd. You and a co-host, Laura, and I'll let you pronounce her last name. What is
Pocatello.
Okay, Bello.
Pocatello.
There you go. Who is also a Nashville music industry professional radio DJ. I think you've done some radio DJ stuff yourself. We'll talk about.
Yes, I have.
All right, cool. So yeah, so tell me about the new show and a little bit about your background, how you got into not only podcasting but being a working in music on those kind of shows, because that's a big deal, as we know.
Well, I was discovered. I guess the way I got into doing TV music is pretty simple. For some reason, during a time when surf music couldn't have been more dead, it was a dead language.
Right.
I decided at like age 15 to become fluent in surf guitar. I love surf music, starting with Joy and Eddie, which is not really surf, but then going into Dick
Right.
Dale and everything else. I spent many hours perfecting surf guitar, which had no value in the marketplace at all until Pulp Fiction.
Ah, right. Yep.
Overnight, I had the coin of the realm. I had a talent that everyone wanted. So I came to Hollywood and I got hired almost immediately to do the music for Third Rock from the Sun. They wanted something different outside of typical sitcom music, and I arrived at exactly the right time, fluent in the right sound. So it finally paid off.
Yeah, and so one of my gigs, I've had a lot of gigs, is I used to play with Frankie Avalon and the beach music stuff, and I also
Really?
play, yeah, and I play with the Champs too, the group that did Tequila.
Whoa, I love the
Which
Champs.
they were all old guys. I was the young kid, but I
Yeah.
kind of grew up, and also being a Southern California kid, I grew up with surf music, really hearing a lot of that. I guess Dick Dale and all those guys. Um, what really drew you to surf guitar? Was that just something that just kind of captured you, or?
Well, it started with Joy and Eddie. When I was 6 years old, my uncle worked at, I come from Camden, New Jersey, and
Okay.
Camden is where RCA Victor started. And Victor actually owned almost all the entire town. They had something like 35 factories there at one point, and then they
Hmm.
RCA bought Victor, and so I grew up in an RCA Victor environment. Everyone on both sides of my family worked there in some capacity or another. And my uncle worked there. And at the end of his shift, when you worked there, they had a box of free records, RCA records to take. And he grabbed a Dwayne Eddy album and gave it to me. I was 6 years old. So it was the first album I ever owned, and I played it a million times, and it's all guitar instrumental. So
Right.
it started there. And this is before the Beatles. That'd be 1963, 62, maybe. So I'm a rock and roll fanatic at age 6, but instrumental music, like vocals and lyrics, I didn't care about them yet. So it started there.
Right.
And then when I first time I heard surf instrumental music, I thought, wow, they're adding reverb to it now. A lot of reverb too.
Yeah, that was sort of the sound, right? The big reverb hall and the.
Yeah, as much reverb as you can put on it. And I fell in love with that too. So it was kind of I almost don't remember life without that sound in my head or in my life.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously too, it's kind of known as a Southern California, sound, I guess, in a way. But um, yeah, so guitar, it led you into moving to Hollywood, doing the music, getting into music, doing the TV shows. And they were looking at kind of for that sound. What was it like working on those shows? Because those are both very popular shows, and I'm sure you've done others as well. But how did you get specifically like with the '70s show? How did that happen? Did they just call you out of the blue or?
Same creators.
Ah,
So
okay.
so we're working on Third Rock from the Sun, and then they say we have an idea for a second show, and you're already the composer, so start coming to the meetings. So I was there from the very first meetings about what that '70s show was going to be. I was there for the some of the casting sessions and the table reads. They wanted me to be part of the team
Awesome.
because, '70s music, you can't do that '70s show without, without caring about the music.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
If you're gonna do a show that's titled that, obviously the music's a key component to what you're doing.
yeah, and I have the same love for rock cliches that the creators of the show did. Like, you know, I believe the creators of the show are the ones who wrote that skit with Will Ferrell with the cowbell on Saturday Night
Oh, okay.
Live.
You're right. Yeah.
And they also
Awesome.
they wrote for Saturday Night Live, and they were teamed up with Mike Myers and Dana Carvey, and they helped them create Wayne's World, and then they co-wrote the Wayne's World movie. So that Bohemian Rhapsody thing, that was Bonnie and Terry Turner's idea, to have the kids singing along to a hit record in the car, which led to that '70s show. They wanted a song in the beginning of they wanted a theme song that the kids could sing to. And I pitched In the Street by Big Star, and they loved it. And we did a re-record with Cheap Trick, and that became the theme for, like, I guess it was eight seasons. I think we went 8 seasons on that show.
Yeah, and a much beloved show. I mean, but both those shows are
Great
obviously,
show.
yeah, they have long legs, which I'm sure is good for royalties. I hope. But
Well, I don't need much money out here, but
right, yeah, right, yeah.
but when I do,
Yeah, it's good to have.
yeah.
What's the not to just focus on those shows, but what's the a lot of people are curious about how that works. What's the schedule on a show like that? It's got to be very intense, just getting the music.
Uh, Grueling would be the word.
Yeah,
Episodic TV, you are on real deadlines because, especially if there's a specialty scene where they want you to underscore something, uh, I would get the final cut of the show on a Tuesday, and we would be doing the final mix on Thursday, and then it will be on the air within a few days. So
yeah.
we, in both shows, so I'm doing 2 shows like that. It was intense. But the great thing about it is any neurosis I might have had as a composer or as a writer were gone, because your first idea is the only idea, because you
Yeah,
don't have
you don't have time, right? Yeah.
right. It's like your job, if if you're writing for a newspaper or you're on episodic TV, you don't have time to think, to second guess anything. They fire you if you do, actually. So
Yeah, and but do you find too, like, I mean, and obviously we're gonna with the podcast we're gonna talk about that, but do you find it's important to build a good team around you, to make that happen? And obviously making the connections
yes.
is an important part of that process.
Yeah, well, I built my own studio, and I had a staff of people around me, engineers and music editors. I got so busy. At one point, I was doing 3 shows at once, and I had music editors leave my studio with hard drives, and they would go to the mix down sessions because I didn't
Right.
have time. I didn't
Yeah,
have
you just
time
can't.
anymore.
Right, you can't be everywhere. Yeah.
I was in a building with no windows, just hacking out music, and I loved it. I loved it. It was romantic because, as a creative person, um, I always created from inspiration, uh, and which meant it was sporadic. Like, there might be a month goes by where I'm not inspired to write a piece of music, and it was cool. Nobody cared. I had a record deal, but I didn't need to deliver more than 12 songs per year.
Right, and that's actually after what you're doing. That's actually the easy part of the day, right? Working
Yeah,
on your own record.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and when I got into TV, what was really cool about it is I found out that I'm not only a creative person, I'm also a craftsman when necessary. And
Right.
I was curious about whether I had what it takes. One of the reasons I came to California to do music for TV and film is I wanted to see if I had it, if I had that talent. Because I admired all these composers, and songwriters, brill building songwriters. they're locked in a room with an upright piano and they're
Yeah.
trying to write a follow up for the Drifters,
It's like a magical scene if you're a songwriter, that whole like that whole thing. And also too, being able to, like you mentioned, to be able to deliver one after another consistently for years. It's not just one album. It's
Yeah.
the grind for 8 years, however many. If you're lucky. If you're lucky, you
Yeah.
get that. You get the
If you're
gig.
lucky. If you're
Exactly.
lucky. I worked on a lot of shows that only made it like one season or a season and a half. Sometimes they didn't make it out of the pilot. Like we
Right.
do a pilot and then that was it. It didn't get picked up. So working on two shows that had longevity, it's every composer's dream, really, you know.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this before we started. It's working on shows that you're proud to say, "Hey, that's my show," and because
Yeah.
not everybody can always say that. And both those shows, particularly, are very loved, right?
Oh, they're funny. They're really funny and they're really funny in a smart way and they hold up.
Yeah, they're timeless, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So tell me about your new podcast. Again, it started January 22nd, straight from the hat with Ben Vaughn. Tell me how you came up with that idea and what motivated you to jump into this crazy podcasting thing.
Well, I was brought in to do a project for Sun Records. It was the 70th birthday of Sun Records, and I was brought in to compile a collection to put out on vinyl. And I was teamed up with Laura Pocadello, who worked at the label. She was helping me through a lot of the stuff, and we started talking, and we realized we had the same taste in music. Like we really loved the same music and had similar record collections. Even though she's much younger than me, her record collection is very, very similar to my, eerily similar. Like people like Rod McEwen and Bob Lynn. And then
Right.
we realized that we both really love Sonny Bono.
You know what?
And
Yeah, exactly. Because
and
he's such a legend in many ways, not just the singing thing, but yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, yeah, no, like we both, and this is, and not ironically, like, oh, it's a joke, it's a kitsch kind of
Right.
thing, like, oh, Sonny Bono. No, he had a career before Sonny and Cher that lasted probably, he probably had like a decade of experience in, with a lot of really great R&B stuff, Don and Dewey and Larry Williams, and he
Yep.
worked with Phil Spector and all this, and he was always starting
Yep. I
labels.
actually played with Donna Dewey.
Did you really?
I really do. Yeah, I was. Oh,
Wow.
not that this isn't about me, obviously, but yeah, I used to.
It is now.
Well, when I was 18 years
Oh,
old, me and my buddy Tracy, who lives in Finland, he's a songwriter in Finland, we got hired to play with Danny Flores, who was the guy that was the sax player, the guy that says tequila on the record,
oh
tequila
yes,
with the
of
champs.
course, yeah, yeah.
And so Danny knew everybody in the world. He was an Orange County guy, and there was a lot of artists that lived in Orange County, lived up obviously in L.A. So he would do like a Thursday night gig where he would bring all of his buddies. So we played with all these old guys that were still living in LA. And Don and Dewey was one of the was one of the
Wow.
one of the groups that we played with. And he was really best. He was great friends with, Little Richard. He just knew everybody, the Righteous Brothers. So I got exposed to that music first before I ever did like anything with rock and top 40. I was playing oldie stuff. And that's when Pee Wee Herman's movie came out. So we were the Tequila was a theme song. So we were doing all these huge fair dates, all these shows, and we're like 18
Yeah.
years old. We're kids playing with these guys that are like 65. So
That's almost identical to Pulp Fiction coming out. When Pee Wee Herman used Tequila,
right.
boom, that was the song, and you had the guy.
Yeah, and it was just
You,
because I grew up. I mean, kind of like you, probably in a way. I grew up with my mom having a huge singles collection. She had boxes and boxes of singles, and I listened to that stuff first, which was like La Bamba, which was all that stuff.
yeah.
My dad was a kind of a hillbilly from Arkansas, so I also got the I got the Tammy Wynette, I got the so that's my weird story. But anyway,
No, no, it's very similar to mine. I grew up in a doo-wop neighborhood.
okay, yeah, right,
There were guys singing on the corner like it's the Shanana did not invent that. It actually happened.
yeah,
There were four guys singing on the corner in my neighborhood. I grew up with doo-wop and the mashed potato and all that stuff because Philadelphia was the dance capital of
right,
America
yeah,
because of American Bandstand before they moved to LA. And so everyone in the country looked to Philly to see what dances are happening. And,
yeah.
records were broken on that show and dances were invented and caught on based on that show. So I grew up in an environment where what people call oldies acts now, they weren't oldies acts then. And in fact, in Philly, on the radio, you could turn the radio on and hear a record from 1959, and the disc jockey would not call it an oldie. It was just a favorite song,
Well,
you
Guns
know.
N' Roses now is an oldies classic rock band, which is
Yeah.
which is hilarious because I mean
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of a universal story. People are like I remember Janis Joplin. I'm like, and someday down the road, if you live long enough, you're able to say that about your favorite bands when you were a teenager.
Well, oh, I'm already nostalgic about Bad Bunny.
Yeah,
I'm ready
yeah.
because that was a couple days ago. So that's an oldie,
Yeah. Well, hey, as fast as the world works these days, yeah, exactly.
Kind
Um,
of, yeah, yeah,
yeah. So you're doing the show, you're doing the podcast, and part of the idea with the podcast is you put a bunch of names. This is my perception of it. You put a
yeah,
bunch of names of people that you worked with in the past, and
yeah.
Laura will pull out a name, and then you basically just go and you start talking about your relationship with that person. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, yeah, because we were talking, and when she was getting to know me, she realized that I had met and worked with a lot of these people
Right.
in her record collection. You know,
Oh, okay.
You know,
Awesome.
so she's like, "You hold it, Gene Pitney, what?" And so
Yeah.
it kept happening, and then finally, together we came up with the idea. Let's throw these names in a hat, and you pull them out, and I'll react, and we'll see if we have something. So we decided to record a demo, but we ended up recording for 3 hours and pulled like 21 names out of the hat. So
Wow.
we thought we might have something here, and then we played the results for some other people, and we were encouraged. They were all like, "Oh yeah, if you edit this down into episodes, you have something here." So that's what we did.
Right. And the thing is, and it's similar for me too. Like what I found is if you don't keep those stories alive, that history gets lost. And it actually is music history, especially when you're interacting with people that are much beloved, like, like a Little Richard or those guys. Do
Yes.
you find that that's an important part of what you're doing with the show is kind of memorializing because some of these guys are not with us anymore.
Oh, yeah, that and also, my interaction with them is one more piece of information about those people if you're curious about those people. Here's
Right.
one more element to who they were. And also I think that what surprised Laura and I was, we went in, whimsical, but it got deep pretty quickly because we're talking about creative people, and it's not easy being a creative person. The intersection of art and commerce is really hard to navigate for sensitive people. And
Right.
most people who make great music are sensitive. So we quickly realized that some of these stories are really funny, but some of them are actually emotionally deep. And it was a surprise how um, sympathetic to the artists the episodes ended up being.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of people that one of the people I used to work with, actually I worked with Billy Preston, but we did a tour with Phyllis Hyman. I don't know if you remember Phyllis, but
Oh, I do. Yeah.
yeah, she was much beloved. And she's not necessarily a household name that a lot of people would know, but in the R&B world, she was a huge
Mm,
legend.
hmm.
And we worked with her, and we worked with her right before she passed, and she was having a lot of problems. And there was a lot of super fans that wanted to know her history that they didn't really know that stuff. And I actually somebody was doing a book on Phyllis, and they contacted me to talk about that. And I was thinking as I was talking to him, I'm like, this history, unless it's recorded, unless it's kind of memorialized, it gets lost. People don't they
Yes.
don't they don't know the history. What's a person that you've worked with in the past or you've had interactions with that comes to mind that it's important to tell their story that maybe you've talked about on the podcast?
Well, before our podcast was released, no one knew that Lalo Schifrin had a stalker.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I believe we broke that story. Uh,
Yeah.
we have an exclusive on that. Uh, no, I guess someone like Alan Vega, of Suicide, a misunderstood person because of the aggression and anger in that music.
Right.
You would think that he was maybe a different person than I knew. So me telling his story, or the story of he and I, our relationship. Alex Chilton, very misunderstood person. Trying to think of who else. Charlie Feathers, the rockabilly Memphis rockabilly genius
Right.
or some genius. He eh, uh, knowing him and working with him, that episode is coming up, and that's a really interesting one.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah,
loved all these people. I loved all these people. We're not dishing dirt or anything. I loved meeting and working with all these people. And the circumstances sometimes get odd, as you know. There's just something odd about show business where you're going to have certain moments where you're like, "Wow, this is a bizarre situation."
yeah,
Show business, or at least rock and roll. I'm a rock and roll musician. I started playing drums when I was 12 and was good enough to get work. And then I learned how to play guitar. So I played in a lot of bar bands. And music is the only occupation where you're encouraged to drink on the job.
yeah, exactly.
A- And not only that, it's assumed that you will accept a case of beer in lieu of payment. Like,
Or,
like
or like a bowl of pasta or whatever.
right. Yeah, free
Exactly.
food from the kitchen
Yeah.
and a case of beer and you'll play. It's the only job where they actually any other job they do drug testing on other jobs, but in rock and
It's almost
roll,
encouraged in rock and roll.
yeah, they encourage it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah,
So
it's
and
interesting. Like you kind of mentioned too, like when you meet these people that are really famous and you have a perception of who they are, and then when you meet them, you go, "Oh, they're completely different." It's. Do you find that has happened to you many times?
well, I think that the thing is we as fans uh listen to records by our favorite people and we feel like we understand them, but we what we don't realize is that they're actually human beings.
Right.
And they're human beings, and all human beings are flawed. Every single human being is flawed. And so, you know, I think that what you're kind of alluding to is it's a surprise that they're human.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And they are. They're human beings,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
they have pressures, and like sometimes they don't want to give the autograph. Maybe they're with the family and they want to be left alone eating dinner. Doesn't make them a bad person. It's just like, hey, they have a life and
Yeah.
outside of show business, which is sometimes it's challenging for fans to deal with that, right?
And it's challenging for the artists too. Like Alex Chilton's a great example. Big Star means so much to there's a certain audience for that the Big Star records saved their life, whether they were an awkward teenager or they were going through a relationship and that they put Big Star on and when they would meet Alex and start telling him that, he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's too
Right.
much for me.
Yeah,
That's too much. It's too
it's
much.
it's heavy, right?
It's heavy. And if you're not in the mood, you're just like, having dinner or you just did a gig and you come off stage and somebody wants to come up and tell you that you saved their life.
Yeah.
Uh, it's it's a shift that's really hard, to make. And Brian Wilson had to deal with that too. Pet Sounds, same thing, that kind of fanaticism, emotional fanaticism for that music. And there are other artists, I'm sure, that like Leonard Cohen probably got that all the time, I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And important artists that we've all grown up with and loved. Like you mentioned, when you listen to their music, you kind of feel like you have a personal connection with them. And
yep.
I'm sure you've had this too, where people walk up to you like, "Hey, I know you from so and so, and I know you from social media," and they feel like they know you, and it's like it's nice to meet fans, but it's also it's a weird boundary issue to deal with, right?
It is. It's strange. It's strange. Luckily, I'm not famous enough for it to be an inconvenience in my life. It's
Well,
just a
you're a well-known guy, but I understand.
it's a surprise when it happens, which takes me out of wherever I was. If I'm
Yeah.
walking down the street by myself, all of a sudden I'm taking a selfie that is immediately being uploaded to the cloud or over live Facebooking, like when I was just looking in a store window only a minute before that.
Right. Yeah. Do I have
And
something on my face? Sounds like
right, yeah, yeah, I should have
I
shaved.
should
I
have
should have
shaved.
shaved. Yeah. I shouldn't have went out in my pajamas. No.
Exactly.
But luckily, I have a great balance. The amount of that in my life is perfect for me. But other people, especially if you're introverted and your art, there's just an imbalance. It's like, you're sitting, it's it's tough for people. And that's what, when we started going through these names and pulling them out, uh, it seems like every third one, there was some kind of emotional element or some kind of sympathetic, sympathy with their plight that would come up.
Yeah, it's
So,
it's interesting. We spent some time with Little Richard. Actually, speaking of Don and Dewey, Dewey came and got us one day and took us up to the well, it used to be known as the Riot House up on I guess Hollywood Boulevard, and Little Richard was actually living there. He lived at that hotel. He had kind of a ranch, and he gave it to his family. He liked living in hotels, so he had this room set up. All of his photos. I know it was really weird. All of his
wow.
photos, all of his photos and stuff. And we spent 3 hours with him one afternoon, and him just telling stories. And I was sitting there thinking, even at a young age, I was 18. I'm thinking, man, this is gold. Like
Yep.
these guys all have, especially somebody like that. Um, you know, um, Carl Perkins, those kind of guys that they have such
Yeah.
deep stories. Do you find like the podcasting format, is that a great place to kind of to share that with fans and kind of like your personal stories with them? It seems like that would be so interesting to hear that.
It's great. It's great. And I've never done a podcast before.
Mhm.
I have a syndicated radio show that is available as a podcast, but it's
Right.
recorded. I do the show for terrestrial radio, and then it becomes a podcast, an
Gotcha.
archive podcast out there. So this is my first time, and I love it because the idea of getting these stories down in a book is something I would never do. I'm not a writer in that kind of way where I would and also, uh, being co-hosted by Laura is great because she knows as much about all these artists as I do. So she really knows when to ask a question and kind of prod a memory out of me or point out that something I just said is weirder than I know.
Yeah,
You know,
you just
you
kind of
should,
take it for granted. She's like, no, wait,
yeah,
stop.
yeah, I'll say something and she has to go, hold it. Let's rewind for a second here. What
Funny.
did you just say? And then I'm aware, oh yeah, that is not normal. Because it all feels normal to me.
Right.
Your memories are your memories, and you don't realize that an outside perspective might be able to shine a light on how unusual or unique, that memory is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, also too, podcasting is more of a long form content. It's not a 30-second 1 minute blurb on a story.
Yeah,
So you're able to
yeah.
really dive deep and explore things that are kind of in a different way. Um, so you have so much experience. What's some advice that you would give to people? Not only just, I mean, obviously doing if they want to get into the whole TV show music thing, but also just interacting and building teams and connections in life. How important is that?
Wow.
That's a
My
big question. I know
career,
that's a big question.
yeah. Well, my career is so customized and odd that you would almost have to be me for any of what I did would work. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah.
Because I was told that I was too weird for the record business. Like my first goal was to be a recording artist who wrote his own material and performed on stage. That was it. And I got a record deal in 1985 or 86, and I made albums and I was on tour a lot. And I was always being told that I was too weird for the record business, that my taste, I needed to pick a lane and become one thing, and I just couldn't do it. I was incapable of it.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of sympathy for the record label. It wasn't like, oh, they're killing art. I was like, no, I'm weird. I know it.
Yeah.
I've been told,
I know my lane.
yeah, I've been told this my whole life, and I know it's true. And it looks like I'm not playing ball, but it's actually an incapability of playing ball. I'm not doing it in an arrogant, anti-capitalism way. I'm like, I just had sympathy. I had real sympathy for the record labels. Like I wouldn't know how to market me either. So
Right.
how can I be mad at them? And then network TV decided that I was not too weird. We're talking mainstream NBC must-see TV in 1996.
Right.
They said, no, you're perfect. Don't change. So the only advice I would give someone is stay true to who you really are, and someone in a position of power will recognize that and value it for exactly what it is. And that's what happened with me. Surf guitar, like I'm over there. It was like speaking Latin, not even just reading Latin. I was walking around I would show up, in a band. I would join a band and I would start speaking Latin on my guitar. And they're like, no, 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 no. For years, for years that went on. And the president of the production company, that her name was Karen Mandebach, she heard me on the radio and decided that I had the sound that they needed for Save Block
Wow.
from the Sun. And no one could talk her out of it. And so someone out there is going to recognize who you are. But my advice would be stay true to yourself. Don't keep trying to change your style of music or your haircut or your clothes or, whatever it is, because when I was coming up, I played with a lot of musicians who were better than me, but they were willing to narrow things down. We are a heavy metal band. We sound like Little Feat. We're country rock,
Right.
whatever
Yeah.
it is. And they would buy the clothing and write the songs and buy the musical gear and pose, in the photos that necessary for that one lane. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. And every time I would play with musicians, I would get booted out of the band because when one of my songs showed up, we sounded like a different band.
Yeah.
So I had to be a solo artist, and I stayed true to myself through a lot of poverty, actually, just staying true to the sound I heard in my head and the expression that I knew that I was naturally meant to express, and it worked out for me. So now I don't know if that would work out for other people or not. I really don't know. But that's how it worked with me. I didn't have a master plan on how to uh have Hollywood success. That was a total surprise to me. A complete surprise to me that they were fine with me exactly as I was. And
Mm.
that's everything changed for me in my career once the right person heard me.
Yeah, I think that that's, such an important advice. And through my music career adventures, I've seen that. I've seen guys chasing it, willing to do anything to chase it. And it's sort of like I equate it to dating. Eventually, you'll find the right one. You just have to give it time and just be, like you mentioned, be who you are, and people will find you, and it's going to be way more authentic. And it's having success with being somebody you're not is not very fulfilling, right?
No, it could be financially good for you. Well, it depends how much you care about being yourself.
Yeah, and some people don't. So, but
Exactly.
yeah, I
I
know,
kind of,
I
I
get
kind
it.
of, I kind of envy them. It's a simple life, but
Yeah,
you know, you
having
know,
no compass and no moral
yeah,
system.
yeah. You just going with the wind. But I'm very aware of who I am, and I can't escape it. It's I know who I am and what I'm capable of and what I'm naturally drawn to do as a creative person.
Yeah,
And
and you got a very big, huge lucky break, but then you did the work, and that's the thing. Because when people
yeah,
they get the break, the big break, they got to be willing to lock in and get it done, and not, like I said, it's not just one album; it's years of
yeah,
grinding, years of getting it done at a high level. So
yeah.
that's an amazing story, and I think it's very inspiring. I really admire what you do. Again, those shows that you worked on and the artists that you worked with, it's all quality. It's all people that still love. They're going to be loving. It's timeless stuff. So that's really, I think, very exciting. Um, Ben, tell people how they can find you and find your podcast and all that stuff.
You can't find me. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere.
Well, we'll send a team out to get you.
You'll never find me. GPS dies right before my house. Uh,
Yeah, I know what
well,
you mean.
well, the podcast is straightfromthehat.com. And let me see, I have a list here of where let's see, here we go. Since we're on video. Uh,
There we go. I should do the same thing.
yeah, yeah. Apple, Podbean, Spotify, Pocket Cast, iHeartRadio, Boomplay, and other places, and no ads. No, which is really important
Awesome.
because if you listen to podcasts, a lot of times you queue it up and it's like three or four ads for everything from
Exactly.
from
Yeah.
banking to pet food,
Right.
sheets, comfortable socks, and then you finally you
Well, comfortable socks is important.
they are important. They are important.
Yeah.
But with no ads, we just go right into content, and it's all content all the way through, and then we're out. So I'm happy not to have ads because it interrupts the flow. You know.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't do that either. I'm fortunate to have some very nice sponsors that are friends, so that helps. And I have 10 other jobs, so
Yeah.
it's not so important for me. But Ben, thank you so much for joining me. Like you have a huge story. We could probably go on for hours, and I'm sure we actually probably know some of the same people in LA. But um, what a cool career you've had, and like a huge life story. And it's not obviously not done yet. You got a lot more ahead of you. But thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Now you're a bass player, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm a bass player. Yep.
So if any oldies acts ask me if do you need an 11th job? Because if an oldies act asks me if I know a bass player, should I give him your number?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, what I'm doing these days, music wise, is we have a lot of tribute acts that we do. So I was just in Florida with the Queen show that we have. We
Wow.
have like a Tina Turner, Rod Stewart, all that stuff, which has been for me, it's fun because you go out, you do a 70-minute show, and then I fly back home and do all my other stuff. So I still get to play, but when I play now, I look forward to it. It's not just a job for me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the
So
best place to be.
yeah, and because I did the Vegas. I was with Cirque du Soleil for 10 years. I did a bunch of different things.
Wow.
So these days I'm mainly, a lot of people know me as a Sports Illustrated photographer with the Raiders. But I kind of I like doing different things. I don't get bored, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
which is
No,
good, right?
I can relate. I can
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
relate.
Oh, I'm sure you don't get bored. You got a lot going on. But
I do.
yeah, but Ben, thank you so much for joining me. Shout out to Lori, your co-host on the podcast, and I'm sure I actually would be interesting to talk with her because the Sun Record thing is also really fascinating. Of course, you know.
Yeah, they just won a Grammy for Best Blues Album.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a
Yeah.
legendary label, but the cool thing with them is they've reinvigorated that whole thing. The whole
They have, and she is a major part of it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really awesome what they've done. So maybe we'll hook that up down the road. But hey, have a great day out in Mojave, and tell all my friends out there if you can find them.
They're hiding too.
Yeah, exactly. Hiding out. But awesome, man. Have a great day, and I appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks. Great talking to you.
All right, you